It is Money Making March for Women as we celebrate Women's History Month here in March on the Crown Yourself podcast. I am so excited to focus on one of the biggest shifts that is happening in the world right now, which is women's wealth. To give you some perspective, according to the report by the Boston Consulting Group, women are expected to hold 1/3 of global wealth by 2030. This represents a significant increase compared to previous decades. Also, the number of women entrepreneurs and business owners is on the rise globally as more women enter the workforce and start their businesses. We are likely to accumulate wealth independently as well as collectively. And now here's the great thing about women and wealth. According to the Global Entrepreneurship Mentor Women's Report, women entrepreneurs contribute approximately $3 trillion to the global economy each year, and we are much more highly likely to be more generous with our charitable giving and behavior, and we also seek to generate social or environmental impact alongside financial returns. So this is very much along the lines of conscious capitalism and being very aware with how we are delegating our dollar to the causes and charities and things that we hold near and dear to our heart for our future. And we collectively, as a human race, are entering into one of the most financially transformative times in human history, where there is a lot happening beyond the surface of what we've been taught about investing or cash, and now there's crypto and Bitcoin skyrocketing and all of these other factors and assets that come along with wealth and what money actually means. And so as a leader, as a coach, and as someone who truly desires you to live your best, most sovereign life, it is my desire to bring you guests this month that will highlight some of the challenges for women and also some of the opportunities for being able to grow, transform, and really learn how to become financially sovereign and free with how you spend your money. And that is why I'm so excited to bring you Keri Norley, the Wealth Alchemist. She can help you safely buy your first crypto in 3 days or less. No matter what your risk appetite or budget, cryptocurrency can help you leverage your wealth and become financially sovereign. So here's a fun fact about Keri. She actually grew up in a very successful family, like the 1% within the 1%. And yet she's known that she is here to make a very big difference. And while the women before her were amazing philanthropists, raising and giving tens of millions of dollars in their time, Keri ran away from everything she knew to live in Australia. Shocker, right? That's why we're friends. And experience a whole different way of living. She spent years studying everything she could get her hands on around wealth, success, money, magic, mindset, human psychology, transformation, alchemy. And she discovered how limiting the relationship people have with money is for most people in the world. So she is taking her 17 years of study and the wealth background that is in her DNA and in every cell of her being to combine this potent energy into an amazing transmission of wealth to the world. And she is here to raise the consciousness of the planet around wealth. She truly believes that the more money you have, the more ability you have to make a bigger impact on this planet. And that is where we are 100% in alignment. As my mentor, Brendon Burchard, says, you cannot sustain the mission without the money. And to paraphrase the book, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, getting rich is one of your greatest duties on the planet, especially as a conscious leader, so that you can decide with your dollar. And the more dollars you have to make decisions, the more power and influence over the decisions that you have that actually shape our world. And so in this episode, Keri and I are talking all about cryptocurrency and financial sovereignty. Now, of course, we are not financial advisors and we are providing no financial advice. We are just giving education and entertainment and sharing our own personal lived experiences with money. So with that, I encourage you to open your hearts and open your minds to the possibility of what crypto and the blockchain has for you to helping you become financially sovereign and free. With that, I give you Keri Norley. Welcome to the Crown Yourself podcast, where together we build your empire and transform your subconscious stories about what's possible for your business, body, and life. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, founder of crownyourself.com, and I'm a master mindset coach, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, known to my clients as a game changer. Each week, you get the conscious leadership strategies you need to help you reign with courage, clarity, and confidence so that you too can make the income and impact you deserve. Imagine this podcast as your royal invitation to step into your full potential and reign in your divine purpose. Your sovereignty starts here, and your reign is now.
Keri Lynn, welcome to the Crown Yourself podcast. When I met you, you were just this beautiful curly haired flowing goddess. And I immediately noticed your slightly Aussie accent. And I was like, oh, she's going to be my friend.
I could say much the same about you without curls.
So I want to dive straight into I believe, and I know you see that like attracts like. It's basic law of attraction. And so when you see someone else standing in their power, in their sovereignty, what does it mean to you to be sovereign and to stand in your own power?
What it means to me to be sovereign is self-responsibility in its highest capacity. I've said since I learned NLP many years ago that if we all could come in and be responsible for ourselves and we all took full responsibility for our lives, we would end war. And because you wouldn't be blaming, if you and I fought, I wouldn't go, oh, well, Kimberly, you da, 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 da. I'd be like, well, what's my part in this? And I take responsibility, and maybe there is a part, and then we can come together and talk and have a conversation versus you blah, 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 which is always pointing the blame, which is always pointing the responsibility outside of ourselves. And as long as we are pointing responsibility outside of ourselves, we can never be fully sovereign.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I would say at the biggest capacity, that is what sovereignty is that we take full responsibility for our lives. And if we look at it even from a different capacity, beyond that, it's that we also break free from the conditioning that people tell us what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to be, who we show up as, how we use our energy, that we have to work the grind or we have to hustle. And if we've talked human design, right? If we look at our energetic blueprints, if we're doing anything less than living in our energetic blueprint, we are not fully sovereign. And the more that we look into the truth of who we truly are in our path and our alignment, and we walk those steps in divine alignment in co-creation, then that to me is sovereign. It's when I make full choice, full responsibility, and I come into the most wholeness of myself. And from that space, move forward. There's no one to blame in the world but yourself.
And even that, even full blame, even blaming yourself, it's not actually taking responsibility. It's just putting yourself in the villain role of your life rather than actually taking ownership, which is a level of energetic acceptance of the foundation of the starting point rather than a perception of oh, now I'm the bad guy in my own story. That's not the case. You get to be the creator, but in order to be the creator, you can't blame. And I love that you mentioned human design, because you and I talked human design for a long time of being able to just understand, because as a projector, I had to really, and I'm still working on deconditioning myself from the way that other people perceive that work is done, because I am very skilled at quantum leaping. I've just realized that is my genius zone of I'm okay, here I am. I show up, I feel fully in alignment, and then bam, house manifested. Just coming from that place of rest and relaxation, which is very different than how I used to do life. And so you as a manifester, how do you do life differently according to your energetic blueprint?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's really interesting because I've been really feeling the call to pull to support manifestors recently, because from what I've understood of human design, we are some of the one of the smallest groups, but one that needs the most deconditioning. Because as a manifestor, for those of you who don't understand human design, as a manifestor, it is our job to initiate. And we are 8% of the population. And we are the only ones on this planet who are designed to initiate, which is a completely different energy than every other human being on this planet. And so in that energy, we actually have what's called a closed aura, so that we can actually protect our energy so that we have the ability to actually initiate. And it's also to protect, because we're not supposed to hear everybody else. We don't respond. We're the only 8% that do not respond to other people. And so if I'm listening to all of your thoughts and everybody's things and doing like, yeah, you know, Keri, you should come over here. You know, you should do this. You could do that. You can do that. Well, then I'm not ever being in my manifestor self. I'm never supposed to respond. And so it's a very different experience of life to most what we are conditioned to, because most of us are conditioned growing up that we have to follow the rules, that we have to listen to our parents and our elders and our yada, yada, yada. And when you raise like a manifestor child, they are the same. So most manifestor children, they are going to be the kids that are the most abused. They're going to run away the most. They're going to try because they don't, as a manifestor, I never need to ask permission for anything, ever. And someone who tells me what I'm supposed to do or says, hey, go do this, or hey, can you this? Like if I have to respond, it's not a natural experience for us. And so it's a huge deconditioning to come into the fact that we can actually own the power of this, I will say this energy, this what I'm born for, and to come from that place. And it's it's also oftentimes because we have a closed aura. Most people don't feel us the same way that you would feel like if I can feel a projector or any other human, like you guys have that. But when mine's closed, we'll come in and people like bounce off, or they're like, I don't understand why I don't like her. And so a lot of times we have problems making friends as well. And so it's a different energy to be in. And in order to fully step into, as you say, the sovereignty of life, it's like I've had to really journey into what does this really mean and surrender to, yeah, okay, so sometimes people aren't going to like me. And thank you for giving me this boundary of I now hold my own energy. And from this place, again, this sovereign space, I know that I'm here to initiate. So what are the paths I'm supposed to take in my own life in order to initiate, right? Which is, you know, when we were talking, one of the things you were supporting me with was stepping into this new role of coming into being a paid professional speaker. And it was a really big decision for me. But again, it was this place of, I know that I'm being the most aligned manifestor to myself, that I'm supposed to go off and initiate. And I'm not supposed to respond to other people. What better way to do something like that is be a manifestor. It goes out and initiates. That's what I'm supposed to do, and gets to, you know, bring change into the world. And so when we really know our design, whether it's projector or manifestor or whatever, it's like we can really come into, well, if I then decided at a point in my life where I had decision, could I go and work this job for somebody else and not and play small and or I can come over here and land in who I'm really supposed to be. I know God's going to reward me. There's no other way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I love that you're supporting people and also bringing awareness to raising manifestor children. Because I know you have a manifestor child. I have a manifestor child. And one of the key points that I just know, like, we're choosing to homeschool him because he would not thrive in a traditional educational system. Like it would suck his soul. And yet, so like finding that balance and dance, and just like a very small example of like working with a manifestor is, as soon as we started to like get some practice and he started to get some wins, suddenly he was like, I said, oh, do you want to go play outside? He's like, no, Mom, I've got more homework. I really want to do it. I said, okay, I'm not going to stop you. Like he was on a roll. He really wanted to learn and create, but he was initiating what he wanted to learn and create. And like, that's how I've been curating his schooling, is like, he initiates, like he wants to learn more about one specific topic, probably space. And so then we curate, like, his learning is around, like, his reading, his writing, his math is all around this topic that he really wants to dive into and master, because he's initiating that. And then we can kind of fill in those spots around it. But I've had to tell him, I said, you don't have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. You just, all I need to know is you just need to tell me, like, just tell me that you're going, and I will support you and go, like, you can go, but like, just allowing for that initiation. I mean, for a projector, learning that my design is always to invite, like, it's to respond to that invitation. And so being able to put out the questions, but never actually, but allowing for that, responding to that invitation with the total game changer for our sales in general, right? Of managing our business. And then also looking into the human design of each one of my businesses, game changer as well. It's like, what is the energetic model that it's being created here? I mean, our Crown Yourself podcast and business is a manifestor.
Wow.
So, yeah.
It's funny, as I looked into my brand, Keri Lynn, for speaking, it was, I'm a manifesting generator. And I was like, what? Wow. And it was really interesting because I feel into the energy that I'm like, well, of course I'm going to be busy and I'm going to be on the road, and it's a very generator energy. Right. And I was like, oh, fun. And it's kind of fun that I'm like, oh, you can kind of step into that when you go onto stage, when you have these places, like pull in that energy. You know, it's a really interesting thing when you start to dive into all of the energies of things.
Yeah. And so in finding that sovereignty and finding that ability to understand, how do we start laying the groundwork for sovereignty? So we have personal responsibility. We take that. We have that very unsexy conversation with ourselves where we stop blaming everybody else for our problems and take radical responsibility. But how does that apply systemically? Like when we see systemic problems, because I know you are the wealth alchemist, and there's systemic problems in the financial industry, like how do we reclaim our sovereignty in the systems that are not designed for us to be sovereign?
Such good questions. So first of all, it's educating ourselves. I know I've been teaching people around this concept for the last 3 years of the financial systems and what happens, and teaching people how to be sovereign within or without of them, right? In the crypto space. And ultimately the foundation is like, most people need to understand how a banking system works, and that we actually are run by 6 banks that all the money files through, that all of it is then also run by the global financial elite. And it is the biggest, most giant pyramid scheme of the entire planet. And when you actually look at it from that perspective and you go, I'm on the bottom of an entire pyramid scheme, and while these people up there are making percent upon percent upon percent upon percent compounding interest on my money that's just sitting in the bank making nothing, you start to question, like, what is this banking system? Is it for me? Who is it for? Because it's certainly not, if you're not ever asked yourself this question, it's not for you. It is for the global financial elite. And those people are so wealthy that they don't come up on a Forbes top 100. We have the, Richard Bransons and the Warren Buffetts and the Jeff Bezos of the world. They have so much money that I don't think that's capable to count it all. Right. And so they do not exist within that system. And when we start to look at that, then we can start to make choices, right? Like, well, how are they doing that? Can we make a different choice? Can we realize what we are part of? Right. Even in that, I think sovereignty begins with, like, what am I a part of? It's like, and you can look at that from the financial system. We can look at this from the healthcare. I would call it a sick care system. We can look at this from the education system. Like, you pulled your child out for the same reasons that we're not in an education system. We're in a system where, and I have my kids in school because I have looked at, we have tried homeschool. We've done all sorts of things because I agree with you. Right. And I look at, especially at my manifestor child, and I can see some of the differences even coming into high school where he's making a new choice, right? We can look at all of these systems and we can say, what's actually the system? Like, what are we teaching? Because in schools, we're teaching people how to go be robots and how to go get jobs. And we're going to have some serious problems in these future years as AI comes out, robots come out, and all of these, so many jobs are being taken away. And this is what our kids are being trained for. Go out and be a sweet little robot. And so we can look at all of these systems and just go, hey, where is this now? And that's the first part of sovereignty, is that, like, even like you said, as human, like as individuals, right? It's like looking at ourselves and going, if I were to take full responsibility, what does this actually look like? Am I showing up for myself in a way that's of the highest capacity, or am I showing up for myself in a way that's actually trapping me into something that doesn't work? And all of these systems, if you ask me, they're broken and they don't work. Right. But we keep putting things through them. And so the next piece from that would be like, how can we change? What are the changes that we want to make? And I think one of the things I wrote in my book, The New Wealth, Magnetize Abundance, Hold Your Wealth and Leave a Legacy, one of the hardest chapters and pieces that I wrote in this book, brings up a lot for me to have put it in there. And it's funny because then my publisher even like borders it out, like the shadows it in the only place. But what I said in it was talking about Donald Trump being president. And I said, whether anyone here likes him or not is irrelevant. We're not talking politics for the moment. But as a human being, that man came in and he showed the shadow, right? He showed us what sucks. He showed us so many things that triggered so many people in humanity for so many different reasons, right? And the end of the day, you can go and again point a finger at him, or you can look at yourself and say, where was that trigger? What triggered in me, right? What was in me that got triggered? And deal with it in your own self, in your own shadow, but then look at it as the collective. Well, okay, if there's things that are being inappropriately done, then where is that also happening in the whole collective? And how do we make a collective change? And because of that, we're seeing a lot more people have a voice, come out of the shadows and say, this isn't okay anymore. right? And so this is how we create it, is by having the awareness, which means we have to come out of the shadows with it. Thank you. Thank you for all the things of the last few years, right? That have shown us what's in the shadows. And then what do we want to do to make a difference? And how are we going to show up for that? You know?
Mm-hmm. It was a huge perspective shift, because when getting to experience the last few years in a different country and seeing how America was responding, positive or negative, like or don't like it, it provides you what in NLP they call perceptual positions. So it gives you a third party perception where you're watching the movie of what's happening rather than being inside the film of what's happening, and being able to see how also other countries and other people were responding, and how, like, I was surprised at some of the responses from Australians regarding some of our systems and at that time our president. And I was surprised at the responses, because that the ability to show the shadow and the ability to see that, and for so many Americans to have woken up to, okay, there are some serious problems in our systems that are, it's not the teachers, it's the system that needs to be righted. And how do we adjust and adapt and make those changes? I mean, when we moved here to Texas, like, it's the norm outside of Austin to homeschool now. It's like, it's weird, because like that was not the case growing up. But like I would say a good 60% of the moms that I meet, and it's not just because I'm running in homeschool communities, I'm running in entrepreneur communities. It's like 60% of them homeschool their children because they've seen, I want to train my kids for what the future is going to hold, which is AI, robotics, and that the educational system is ill prepared at this moment to teach our kids how to think and to teach the skill sets of such as storytelling that are actually going to be the leverageable skill sets of the future.
Heck yes. Totally.
So
I mean, like, even if I look at financial stuff, right? Because I think basic finances need to be taught in schools, and they're not. And when I started really diving into crypto and my own investing strategies and all these types of things, which very excitingly, by the way, Save Your Assets is coming in the next month. Yes. Another book. But as I started to dive into this stuff, I started to really, again, understand, like, what is this and how do we really make changes? What is happening here? And of course, I'm teaching my kids. And so Robbie would go into school and he would start talking to people about compounding interest and all these different things. And hey, to the banking this. And his teachers and the parents had come up to me and like, how does he know this? I didn't even know this. I'm like, I know you guys don't teach it because you don't know it. And the problem is you don't know it. And you're grown human beings with children of your own in a house with mortgages, and you don't understand how that actually functions. Mm-hmm. So what happens in a bank is that ultimately you put your money into a bank, and then they have the capability to lend it out 9 times. So you have, call it 50 grand in there. So then they can take it and lend it out to, I can have it, Kimberly can have it, then so-and-so and so-and-so. So by 9 times, which means that they don't have that money in the bank, right? We are literally lending out money that doesn't exist. And then what happens is that on each one of those, they get to have interest. Those interests, they're making anywhere from, what's mortgage rates right now? Some
8%.
people be locked in 8%. Some people be locked in at 4% from before, right? Mm-hmm. All the way up to credit card, 28%. 9 times on your money, while you make maybe 1%, right? So again, this is how we're at the bottom, they're at the top. And then what happens in the financial collapses that have happened in banks, which we've seen in the last year, by the way.
Yeah.
We've seen banks collapse already, you guys. This isn't like take your head out of the sand. This isn't not happening.
Yeah, the Silicon Valley Bank, right?
They collapsed quite hard. And in that, really problematically, because it was a Silicon Valley Bank, so many startups that were funded on this money were screwed, because this isn't just like, people just sitting in there and it's legacy money that people can live without for a little bit of time. Like, these people need this money, and that's what's funding the world to grow right now. Mm-hmm. And so when that starts to happen, these banks collapse because they have not the cash. If people start to pull the cash out of the bank, it doesn't exist. Right. Like, literally we have zero. Like, and I always think about this when you look at crypto, people are like, but crypto is nothing. There's zero there. There's like, you've come out of thin air. I'm like, what do you think actual money is? Like, right. We print money from the Fed. How many billions and billions of dollars? We are so many trillions of dollars more in debt from COVID of these last few years. And where did it come from? Where did the money come from that we just somehow magically all got thousands of dollars? It came because they printed it and they made money out of thin air. And so now we have inflation. And I don't know about you, but I can't walk outside my house these days and not notice that everything is a lot more expensive.
Yep. And I think being able to, like, when you start seeing it, like, especially what you were speaking of really reminded me of the crash of 29. Like when that happened, when the people started to see the stock market crashing, they rushed to the banks to retract their money, and then depression. So it's this concept of the illusion of money. So there's the actual financial process and system, but then there's the money manifestation mindset. Like, how does that all play in and tie together? Especially if money is a tool, it's a resource, I've heard it described, it's like, it's energy because it's thin air, like it's just like oxygen. So how does all of that tie in together?
So manifesting coming into sovereignty?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a good question. I think if I look at what we've just been talking about, it is the fact that we make the choice, right? Like we make the choice from the beginning of how do we look at what's here, right? So if I even look at the manifestation process, what's here? What's in front of me? Because if everything is illusion, including money, right? Because it is literally coming out of thin air, and everything's an illusion, then what's the image in my mind that I'm putting out there to see? Am I seeing $0 in my bank account, or am I seeing that there's hundreds of thousands of dollars in my bank account? Because whatever I see is what I'm going to create. And it's the same thing. And the other thing to consider, and I will say this too, and I think this is something to really, as an awareness to pay into, is the slavery debt-based society that we live in, right? So if we see government, and I think this is one of the biggest problems that we have as far as getting ourselves out of this, if we see government printing out money upon money upon money, first of all, we see it as an endless, like it can be created from thin air, right? But the way they do it puts us into such debt that we go backwards. And ultimately, I can't remember the exact number, but like each one of us has like call it 120,000. Don't quote me on this, but it's a substantial amount of money, about $120,000 worth of debt on our heads the moment that we're basically born, right? We're human and you come into debt of trillions of dollars. Well, that's my debt at some level as a human in this American society. And so when we look at that from a manifestation perspective, if we haven't looked at how we are enslaved in the system and how we are taught to live in fear, scarcity, lack, debt, because that is literally what we are taught from the top down, right? And the reality is that most parents haven't actually learned and then been able to teach us. We are starting this, right? You and I in this beautiful community that we have. But from before this, it was not consciously taught to anybody that it's like, actually, we're not in that. There's always been some sort of lack and scarcity drilled into us in the financial world. So the first piece in order to actually having the manifestation is to look at, like, again, it's these beautiful ways of like getting curious. I think that's the first step every time, is to like get curious and go, okay, so what do I believe? Where am I at? What are the beliefs that were passed down to me from generations to generations? What were the beliefs that were passed on to me from debt, from government? What were the beliefs that were passed down to me from my teachers, from my mentors, whatever it is, right? And then from there, we can say, is that true or not? And then if it isn't true, well, what's the new choice to be made? And then from that choice, we create a new vision. We create a new timeline, a new experience. And then we can manifest from that space versus the space of, this is inherently who we are because God told us, I'm not even going to say that, because government told us, because people outside of us told us that this is, what's supposed to be true, but it's not. And like when I look at the new wealth, the vision for this, it was really like, how do we move from lack and scarcity into, well, if it's just as easy for me to see on the image of my mind, lack and scarcity, and it's just as easy for us to live in this space because that's what we've been trained to believe, then it's equally as easy for me to go, wait, I can just have a really abundant, beautiful, loving, peaceful, blissful life. And you and I both know it's not quite as simple as just being like, and here we are.
Yep. Took like a decade of work for me.
It's a journey of a bridge.
That was
not comfortable.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable, but because you're literally pulling yourself out of a system and extracting all of the different generational societal beliefs. And if we were to just look at this current system that we live in, I mean, right now, there's the threat of a government shutdown in general, not to talk politics. And one of the things that this person is presenting is that the government has not yet balanced a budget. And I was like, we are supposed to be, if we look to our leaders and as government as a leader, and they're not yet doing these basic financial things, then collectively as a society, like not balancing a budget and, oh, let's just spend, oh, let's just debt. Collectively as a society, what are we picking up for in the collective consciousness as well? And we're picking up spending more than you earn. No, what's a budget? Like, and how we manage money. Like we're picking up collectively that, oh, we can just be kind of willy-nilly about it. And we'll just kind of go along.
Credit debt.
Yep. Yeah. Tons of credit card debt. And like, I mean, I can't tell you the relief that I felt when I paid off $40,000 worth of credit card debt. And I was like, free, done. Thank you. Like not doing that again. And just, but the perception of, and it's not that debt is bad. It's like, I look at as debt. When you take personal responsibility, it's a choice to pay something off over time. It's a choice, unless you're choosing to unconsciously choose that. Like you're not actually consciously choosing that thing. So
it's more of a trauma response.
It's more of a trauma response, right? So how do we extract ourselves from the system? Like first of all, what is a mindset to start thinking of, to start actually extracting ourselves from the system, to embracing a new level of consciousness about wealth and money?
So I think the first step, again, if we come back to, is like to actually even have awareness. Do I want to be a part of the system? Because right now, as we talk about this awakening, I would imagine some of you listening have never actually considered this, right? Like, and if this is you, I wildly celebrate you right now. I wildly
actually
celebrate.
Be triggering you right now.
Right? And I'm so freaking excited that you are here listening to this conversation, because I really hope that you then go and look and you say, is this for me? Because some people, they don't want to break free, right? And if that's you, celebrate that too. Make that choice that that's for you. But then otherwise, it's like we have to make the awareness and the choice, then the thought process. And I will say, actually, this was a really interesting piece for me when I separated from my ex last year. And when we separated, I don't know if anyone listening has been married for a long time. It was 17 years we were together, and your dreams become our dreams, right? And so in the separation, I was like, what are my dreams? Like, what do I even want if I'm just on my own? And I want to create it. Like, because sometimes it was like a combined thing, or like it would happen because I knew he was going to be that side of it. So it was awesome. I'm psyched to have that dream, but it wasn't going to be my job, part of the job, to create that part of the dream. Right. And so I think it's the same concept here. Is it's like, sometimes it can be a little bit wobbly. I didn't know right away. Like, it's taken me a year of just sitting and like, I don't freaking know. And I say this to give permission to, like, if you're just waking up to this, you don't have to know. But eventually what you have to do is find that vision within yourself. And then the beliefs, ultimately, I say it's a be, do, have, right? Look at the person that you want to be like. So I want to go out, we just said, be a paid professional speaker, yada, yada, yada. So now I'm going to go and work with people who are paid professional speakers. And how do they show up? What are the things that they do? Like, we're modeling, right? What are the ways that they experience life? What are the things that they have to do on a daily basis to get this job done? What are the So like, who am I going to have to be? Right? Well, I'm not going to be somebody who doesn't ever get on a podcast and who isn't going to be willing to take no for an answer and, you know, all the things. And I'm not going to be the person who's got like a tiny little voice that wants to just have a little quiet mousy thing, right? Like, we've got to then look and go, okay, well, who's that person over there? I want to be a singer. Well, who does the singer show up to be? I want to be an artist. What is she doing? If I want to have a fit, hot body, right? I'm not sitting on my couch. I love that you did the story the other day, that post the other day, like, I'm up at 5 a.m. and I'm waking everybody up, right? That person doesn't sit on her behind and be like, yeah, somehow if I just sit here, my body is going to be hot and I'm going to feel great. Right. And so it's like, we look at the way that we want to be. So we create that vision. Who do I have to be in order to bring that into my world? Then I go and I take those actions. So I want to have a hot body then, or I want to feel really good. Cause I know for me, it's not really about the size of my body. It's how I feel inside and my mental capacity to live. And so I go do the action, and then I have the result. I feel better. Right. And so when we look at these choices, if we're in a system that we don't like, if we're in a life or an experience that we don't want to be in, then we have to do that assessment and then, okay, who do I want to be instead? And then take those action steps. And I think a lot of people do this backwards. It's like, what do I want to have? And so I try and get to that. And then there's this gap. And I find it interesting. I've been talking to some people about this and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. But the gap when it's like, I'm sitting here and the have is over there. Right. And it's like, there's a real anxious place in the middle. And I'm like, but what if it didn't have to feel so anxious because it's actually just, I'm just focusing on the being, because I think it's the gap that actually creates the anxiety of like, I don't know how to, because you've not experienced it. Right.
Yeah. You're tripping over the how.
And so it's really interesting because the more that I collapse that piece, the less anxiety I feel towards the vision. And I think that anxiety can create, obviously it's a vibration, right? It's the fear because I don't actually know.
Like my reaction is and I take this from my experience in reprogramming my mind and body from 10 years of being bulimic. And when I was going through that retraining, and this was before I knew anything, this was just my own experimentation, but I realized that what I wanted to have was not necessarily a fit body. Like I did technically want that, but that was the personification of a feeling that I thought I would have. And I think when we forget that, when we attach it to like, I want to have $1 bajillion in my bank account, or I want to have this, it's not the thing that you necessarily want to have. It's what is the feeling. And so if we can think of like, how can I manifest, how can I create that feeling, that desired vibration? Because that's an emotional vibration that's unconscious. How can I create that feeling now? That's when we start to bring the having of what the picture, because the picture of what we think we want, whether it's a body or hundreds of thousands of dollars in our bank account, or the dream house or the dream business, like the picture is what's dictating what we think it is. But it's not just the picture, it's the feelings that we think that by being in that picture, we're going to experience. And when we can have those feelings, that changes everything. And it draws that picture closer to us because suddenly we're feeling the feelings already of what that would result in.
Such an amazing distinction. It's like it's the true essence. What you just said is living in the wish fulfilled. And I remember when I first heard that, living in the wish fulfilled, I was like, that's bullshit. Right? You're like, what are you talking about? I don't know what that wish is, right? Because if you look at it from a really mental perspective, that is true, right? Like, I don't know. How can I live in that wish fulfilled? I don't have a man sitting next to me. I don't have $1 million in my bank account. I don't have, so it can't be true, right? But if we step into the feelings of the wish fulfilled, then it's already here. And the more that you feel those experiences of life, it's like, of course, things just show up around you. I can't, until you actually get it, like you can't understand it. But I swear to God, all day long, when you really get this, and it's so freaking simple. I mean, like, I think you and I just gave them like a gift of like truly thousands of dollars of training you and I have been through.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars of training.
Right. True. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of training to literally put it here. Like, this is worth millions to you guys. Like, it truly is the answer. And people oftentimes make it so much harder.
And I think that the biggest trip up that I've seen in my own manifestation process is when I actually realize that I don't have clarity on what that picture looks like.
Right.
And if you don't have clarity on what that picture looks like, then you're constantly manifesting what it doesn't look like. And then that's what you're experiencing as your reality. So it's getting clarity on what would it look like. How would you imagine? We're very good at imagining chaos. We're very good at imagining the worst case scenario, which is why we sometimes create that. But when we can imagine and put ourselves in like, what would it look like? Like, just to dream for a second, like, what would it look like to just like wake up and not have a stack full of bills? Or what would it look like to wake up and just be like, oh yeah, I can pay that, no problem. Like, what would it look like to wake up and look in the mirror and be like, damn, like, I look good today. Like, what would that look like? And so just playing in the imagination of getting clarity on what the picture is. And then once you see clarity on the picture, then you can see, okay, well, how am I feeling? How am I responding to things? And that's more my projector language of like, what are the invitations that I'm getting inside of that picture? Like, what am I receiving? What am I experiencing? Like, am I experiencing like massive anxiety because, oh my gosh, like I need to pay these bills or something? No, probably not. Am I experiencing like the massive anxiety of like, or the disappointment or the like, oh, my body's not where I want it to be? No. because that's not what's happening in the picture. So we have to have clarity on the picture first. And then from like, or at least this is my process, finding clarity on the picture of what is that internal representation, to use NLP language, that's you see, hear, feel, like a full sensory image. And then what are you feeling as you're going about your day inside of that dream reality? Like, what are you feeling peace? Like, are you feeling joy? Are you feeling like, I'll get it done at some point? Like, it's not like you're probably not feeling the overwhelmed guilt, shame, and fear that you have at this moment. You're probably feeling a lot more clarity in that picture. You're probably feeling like you know exactly what you're supposed to do. And so then going into your day and going into your work and going into your, whether it's working out or your work or your finances, going into your day with those feelings of like, I already know what I need to do, because the multi-million-dollar version of yourself isn't going like, how do I think about the multi-million-dollar? Like, how am I thinking about this? No, you're already there. So like that version of yourself is already experiencing it. And so you go into your day thinking, feeling those feelings of like, I already know what I need to do, and trusting yourself in that space.
I love that. Yeah, I want to add too, because one of the things that like, it's so true that you need to have the vision. And I had said earlier that this last year, I really didn't. And so I want to just kind of speak to like when you don't, right? Because as a person who is a epic, and I've been teaching manifestation for 20 years and I'm a really good manifester. And I can tell you when I didn't, exactly what you said. And I sat in a dark hole, and true, like there's nobody around me, and anyone who's been through divorce and the things that I went through, like sometimes we just need to be there. And that's why I'm saying this, because sometimes we just need to heal. And sometimes we just need to experience life and feel it. But I can tell you it was not pleasant, and it did not move me towards anything. But and this is where I want to say the hugeness, because I had to start walking before I had a vision. And I think this is sometimes really important, is that if you're in that space where you don't actually have full clarity, that's okay too. Because if you just step and you're not certain, that's okay, because that step will take you to the next step that might take you to the next step of knowing. So for me, one of the ways that was out was like, again, knowing ourselves, knowing the truth of ourselves. I know I love to write. Like, in any given point in time in my life, if there was something that I could always do, is write. And if I'm not writing, there's something not okay with myself, right? I am an author. I call myself an author for a freaking reason, right? And I've written more words than many probably will write an entire life I can write in a year, right? And so when I wasn't writing, I was like, my God, I couldn't journal. I didn't want my computer right, and none of it. And so literally my publisher put a thing out, and he's like, hey, early bird special on for book writing. This was November. He put it on for February. And I sent him a message. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to write. I don't know if I'll be ready, but I'm going to sit my butt in a chair and I'm going to write. And I'm going to write myself out. And you're going to make me sit my butt in a chair and write myself out. And if I have to wait for 3 months to get there to the place where I can finally write myself out, that's what's going to happen. Because I knew that was my way out. I didn't know the vision, people. And literally this was February. We had a call set for right after New Year's to actually land the book. And he's like, you're not ready. I'm like, I'm not ready. I don't know what I'm going to write. I was not ready. And all of a sudden when it hit, I had a huge experience in life that like blew up life. And it hit, and both of us just went, you're ready. And I'm like, I'm ready. We landed the book. Everything in my life, like I had to purge so much of this stuff through my writing, because that's what it was. And even when I wrote, I was like, I don't know that I'm going to publish. Throughout the whole book writing process, I was like, I know that I'm writing it for me. I don't know that I'm going to publish it. My publishers are still pushing my behind through. You're publishing this, Keri. It's really good. I'm like, But the point being, like, I'm still here taking the steps, not actually knowing the vision yet.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's going to happen with that book. I just know that it needed to be birthed through me. And I know that there's so many things that are going to help. And regardless of what it does for anyone else, to be totally fair with this one, it saved me. Right. And I say this because sometimes we don't know. And I still don't know. But that book has a freaking life of its own, and it has taken me on a journey. And that's what happens with books. We birth them, and it's like they really birth us. And sometimes we don't know. And through that process, though, it has given me the gift of myself. It has given me so like beyond words what I have done in writing that book. And it has put me on the path that I'm on now. But I didn't know. And so sometimes we just got to take chances and risks and know ourselves enough to go, I know that this is a step. And sometimes beyond that, I don't know the next one, but that's manifestation. Like that's co-creation. Like I don't have to always know. And that's when we are in that true surrender of, I'm going to walk with you, God. I'm going to be like, all right, you showed me. I have a very clear, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know the step beyond it, but thank God you showed me this one. And this is just a little bit piece of light that's going to take me to the next one. And so I think sometimes like if you don't have that clear vision, that's how we get there.
I think it's, the word that comes to me is devotion, a devotion to the commitment to the gift of processing it through. And whatever that creative modality is for you, whether it's painting or dance or sports or writing, like just allowing for that gift. For some, it's birthing a business. Like it's what is that creative modality for you that allows you to get that activation to just take step after step. It reminds me of what my mom said in high school when I was really, really depressed, like super depressed, super perfectionistic, trying to do everything right, getting A's in all the classes that I didn't care about. And she said, Kim, just take a step. Just take a step. That's it. And that it's in that just do some action to move you out of that space. So that you feel, and for me, that was like writing a screenplay and just being 16-year-old, won awards. I'm just, let's just do it.
Can I just discuss here? Wait, really quickly. I want to say here, because I think this is a really big thing in entrepreneurs and in women, like the dualities, right? Like the dualities of how we can mask what we're actually feeling inside, and yet we can be so freaking amazingly epic on the outside. And like, I think one of the things that I know for me personally is like, I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because I think a lot of more people need to understand that, like, just because we look really amazingly successful on the outside and you and I can sit here and say, we're on podcasts, I have books, I have all these things. I promise you that there is darkness sometimes, that it's like, I don't know how I'm going to take that next step, but you freaking do. And I think sometimes we have to remember that, like, for ourselves and for others, and that like, we're all in this together. And I think there's so many people hide their mental health stuff. And I'm so grateful now that we're having circles that we are in. Right. And it's not common. It's not common for us to be able to be like, oh my God, I'm really successful, but I'm also falling apart in a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's okay. And it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen, especially with entrepreneurs, they're just in general, there's a higher rate as far as every entrepreneur I've ever talked to has always experienced some form of anxiety or depression at some point in their life, with some point in their journey. And I think being open and transparent with that's like, it's part of the journey. It doesn't have to last long necessarily, but it may be part of your journey, and that's okay. And giving that permission to allow for it to process instead of repressing, suppressing. And then as one of my favorite books, the Body Keeps the Score, the body always asks for its due eventually. And shifting into like the mental stress that can come with finances. And you like circling back to like eradicating yourself from the system, being okay with being in that space of saying, okay, I don't know what it is that I want. How do you then start building what it is that you want? How can you start creating a system that works for you?
Beautiful. So again, if we come back to what we've been saying, like, it's so beautiful how like the layers, it's always the same thing, really. Right. So if we look at it, first we have to have the vision. You have to know what you want. So, and again, I think so many people lack this. What do I actually really want in my life? And I think a lot of times as well, having been in the personal development space and entrepreneurial space for a long time, a lot of people put a carrot that isn't even theirs. Right. Like, I want the 7-figure year. I want the big house. I'm like, do you actually, or is that just a picture that someone told you needed to have that success? Right. So like, this is like number one thing is like, what does it actually mean? And at the end of the day, like when you then start to backtrack, like I look at this again as this big picture, like, okay, so this is what I want. How do I come back to backtrack that? Well, if we look at numbers, like basic, here we are numbers, people are going to need to know, like, okay, so if I want to live off of, my freedom number is 100K a year, 250K a year, whatever it is, whatever your freedom number is, which is what's it going to cost for me to live my life and the desires that I have in my life. Right. And then you go, okay, so if I want 100 grand a year, which whatever that is, right? It's just going to say it for numbers here, then call it, I need $1 million in a bank account at 10% a year to make 100 grand a year. It's really that simple. So then how do I make $1 million in my bank account? Make me 10% a year. And so then you can start to look at now, then you start to make choices. Again, we come back to be, do, have. Then you'll start to make choices that are in alignment with. So I watch people and they're like, I can't afford to. I'm like, I know people who make 100K a year, 60K a year, that they live under the budget. And then they actually, even if it's tick by tick by tick, $10 a week, whatever it is, right? You start to put aside money. But at that point, you'll make new choices. I'm not going to go buy that pair of earrings. That's a piece of shit cheap pair of earrings that don't really matter to me, that I would rather put that $10 into savings. Right. And we start to make new and aligned choices so that we can actually create the financial sovereignty that we desire. Does that answer that question for you?
Mm-hmm. And so with that money being in a bank, though, it is being in a system. So eradicating yourself from that system, is it crypto? Is it NFTs that, kind of happened and then now they're not? So like, what's, not saying that this is financial advice, but like how, like, is it just the understanding of knowing that the money is in a system? Is it being able to play both sides of saying, I'm going to be in the system, but not of the system? Understanding that if your money is in the system, then, what other things do you have that are outside of it? Maybe real estate that's full owned equity or something else. How do you work within and also without the system?
So funny, I said Save Your Assets is launching. Like I am actually teaching this in the course. So I'll be teaching like, how do you break this down and you make aligned decisions for your risk assessment, for how do you actually even know, again, this vision, how do we break this down? There'll be calculators, all sorts of stuff like that. So it's funny that I'm actually like, oh, I'm actually teaching this. It's exciting. But to say it as broadly as humanly possible here without giving financial advice, it really does depend on your desires. Again, like, do I feel there's a lot of people who are like, I don't want to go into the crypto space and it's too much work or it's whatever. So like, that's a choice. There's nothing right or wrong with that. That's just a choice. And if you now know that I'm in a banking system that does this thing and you choose to stay there, then you know that. I will also say that like, be mindful, because if the banking system has problems, you can have your money trapped in a bank. And again, that has happened in the last year. We've had bail-in laws happen across the world, meaning that the bank actually holds your money and you can't access it. That is part of what is happening right now. And so people think that the banking system is safe, but it's not in that respect. But then again, moving into the crypto space, you have different risks. And there is an education that comes with it. I would tell anybody who wants to move into there, like, you need to educate yourself and you need to be the sovereignness here. The beautiful thing about sovereignty in the crypto space is that it is out of the banking systems. And if we look at this on a very crypto level, which I love talking about, you are out of the banking system. It is not, the money cannot be tracked back to you unless you do things that trace it back to you, which is fine. But like, it doesn't have, like, you don't have a number, like you're a number in a system, like you're just a number, you're not, and so you do have a different level of sovereignty for yourself, but in sovereignty is also responsibility, right? So if you truly, and I'm saying this because there are different levels of crypto, you can come into crypto and you can go buy your Bitcoin and your ETH and you can live on a centralized thing like Coinbase and you're not actually totally decentralized. And I'm not going to get into the technicals of this, but like, it's still like, yeah, you can go buy it and it'll sit there. And if something happens, you'll have someone to talk to and it happen. But there's when you fully decentralize yourself, which means that your money is literally, it's like, if I lost my wallet, I would lose the cash that's in my wallet. Right? Like, it's that level of decentralization, because you can't go to the bank and say, by the way, I dropped my wallet and can you give me $100 back? Bank's going to say, screw you. So when we get to that level of decentralization, then ultimately the level of responsibility that you have to have in order to know that you do not have somebody you can just call up and be like, by the way, I just lost my wallet. And so it's a really beautiful thing. And it's also a level of responsibility that people don't always consider. And so there's an education that has to happen for you to be able to navigate it safely. So when you ask me that question, I will say, do you want that? Do you not? Right? I will firmly say over and over and over again that I think it's most definitely worth your time to learn this. Because from the inside, knowing what's going on over here in the crypto world and knowing blockchain, you can look at all the ups and downs and all the volatiles of all the things, and you can, whatever. Things are going to come and go, just like in the .com era, things came and went, right? This is a new field, and we're going to have things that fail and things that we're going to learn our lessons, right? And so in that same way, so if we, Yeah, if we look to like what's going to be continuing to happen, then we need to educate ourselves. Blockchain technology itself is here to stay. We're already seeing them get layered into banks. So some of this technology is already coming into the banking system. You just don't know about it. So the way that it works when we actually look at blockchain and decentralized finance, when you fully pull yourself out, is that you become your own bank. So all those things that I just talked about, like that the banking system has, well, I can now lend out money. I make that interest. I am effectively the bank. And so we can then have higher interest rates. Like when the whole market has just crashed, DeFi market did go down and we were only getting 1 to 5%. I've seen things now back up again. And so you can hit 10 to 20% compounding interest depending on where you are and when the market is and how far deep you want to go into this. But you can actually get to places where in the traditional banking system, we can't get that percentages. And not only that, but one of the truest, most phenomenal things that a bank has is daily compounding interest. And if you look at compounding interest over time, people, if you're making, say you've got $1,000 in your bank account and you've got 1% coming in, what's that? $1 in a month, right? And so you'll make $1 a month. So now at the end of the month, you have $1,000 and
$1,001.
Right. But if that compounds every day, then you have 1,001. And then the next day it's 1,001 and it's 1,000, right? So by the end of the month, call it, it's 1,010. Right. So you've already made more money in that month, which then compounds on top of itself and on top of which over time makes a big, big difference. And so when you can actually come into the space and you can actually get to be the bank, you'll see a huge shift in the way that you can actually, again, have a relationship with money and what it can do for you. So when you ask that question, it's kind of like you have to decide. And at the end of the day, it's an alignment. Like, what is that vision? How do I want to get there? Where's my risk? Looking at all the different components of what you would want to do. Where does that fit into a risk profile? And how much time and energy do you want to spend doing it? And we'll say one more thing. My mentor talks about, and I freaking love this comment, is a lot of people look at diversification and say that this is a really good thing for a portfolio. My mentor will talk about, he uses this word called diversification. And I love this concept because a lot of people will try and go and invest in too many things at one time. Right. So they'll be like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to try and be in crypto and I'm going to try and do stock market and I'm going to buy a house and then they're going to, because they want to diversify, but they know nothing about any of it. And they're trusting everybody else. Again, this is putting our power outside of ourselves. I'm trusting everybody else to tell me that this is the right thing, but you don't know enough about any one of those things to be like, I can make a really sound, educated decision. Right. So my suggestion is that no matter what it is that you choose in any one of these avenues, is that you educate yourself enough to understand that thing first, get good at it first, and then be like, okay, great. I now get that. Like, so now I can go like, I get DeFi. It's good. We're good over here. Right. I want to try, which is true. Like, I'm like, maybe I want to start doing some real estate investing now. Right. Because DeFi and I are pretty sound. Yeah. Right. And so now I'm like, okay, so now I would open up to, can I do something else? But then how does that fit into my portfolio, my risk, this vision, right? And then we can make these aligned choices.
The risk and also the management, like the self-management that comes into being able to be aware of your finances and whatnot. And, having real estate properties and like we had one property, a multi-unit apartment complex in Albuquerque that was it was a hard learning lesson. Like it was just challenging with managing the managers and figuring out how to make all the improvements and dealing with, tenants and all the things. And I'm not saying don't do it, because we have some great investments that we've had in real estate. And it is a learning curve. And we had we're just going to put probably $100,000 education in from that first property, simply because of the learning curve that came with having a multi-unit as compared to what my husband was more used to, which was flipping, wholesaling, etc. So inside of whatever you choose to go with in investing in exploration, there's also the variances. Like what you said is like, you can go with crypto, that you can just go to Coinbase, have your wallet, or you go into complete DeFi, or you go into like what is coming down the pipeline in a lot of governments, which is CBDCs.
Right.
So it's like you can choose which is the path that you want to choose, but it does come, there are gradiences even within, there's levels within the investment space that you're looking at. And one of my mentors, Mel Abraham, just recently spoke on wealth growth and whatnot. And he said, always be the captain of the ship. It doesn't matter whether you have a financial advisor or a fiduciary or someone in the space, like, you are the captain of the ship regardless. And it's that vision first that you want to start with, and then lead into that.
It's actually why I wrote this book and the course the way that I did it, was because there's so many people who it's like, if you go to a financial advisor, the financial advisor is going to tell you to invest in stocks. That's what they do. Yeah. Right. If you go to a real estate person, they're going to tell you that real estate's the best, and they've got 7 houses and whatever the thing is, and they're going to, and they're going to think that's the best. And if you go to a crypto person who's successful in crypto, they might tell you that crypto's the best. Right. But none of that's true. And all of that's true. Right. You've got to figure out what's the best for you. And you have to know within yourself what's the best, that you can go and then seek the help that you want. And they're only helping you to get specific information for that thing that you're working on in that moment. It's not that they understand your whole portfolio, because they don't. And they actually probably don't necessarily, I don't know if they have they asked you, right? As you go to buy real estate, they're not necessarily asking you, what's your stock portfolio and what's this? And how does this fit into your long-term vision? They're just going to be like, great, let's go buy a house.
Yep.
Right. Let me have that commission. Right. And it's fair. That's what they're there for. And so that's why I did it. It was like, I really wanted people to understand, like, what is it that is your vision, and how do you work towards that, and how do you create that for yourself? Because that's the foundation for everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you just said. And a lot of fiduciaries, they won't even touch crypto. They're focused on stocks and bonds and all of that. And so it's looking at the whole gambit of, like, what do you want to start with? And having that starting point in building generational wealth. How do you think about money now, in terms of, like, what you're teaching to your kids? Like, how do you think about money in terms of the legacy that you're leaving?
It's interesting, because the reason that I'm wanting to go into speaking, and the place that I want to go into speaking, is working with high level people in corporate. And the fact that I look at, like, I mean, very deeply in my experience of money, and what you even said earlier today, which is money is energy. And money is a currency. And if I look at money as a currency, it is one of the current, I don't know. You can tell me if there's any other currency on this planet that moves, is daily and touched by so many people every single day, all day long, as money. And so if I look at that as a currency, and that's an energy that moves through our planet, I am here without a doubt to help shift the consciousness of this planet. So I'm like, well, the fastest way that I can look at doing that is, let's change the relationship that we have with money. Because then if we do, and we change the people who are holding the money and carrying the money and moving the money and shifting the money, then the entire energy that comes through that shifts. And so I believe that as we start to evolve in our own selves, and I believe this, whether it's money or anything else, any part of what we're doing in this change, as we start to, I think it's a very individual journey. And it's like, we're moving from this big tribal thing that happened, right, in our world, that we all have to be doing the same exact thing, the socialism, this whole, like, we're all here together, we're all one. But actually, the more that we come back into our individuality, right, and we do what's right for each one of us, and then we come into our wholeness within ourselves, then from that space, we shift the whole consciousness, taking responsibility, moving that through. And it starts with one. It starts with each one of us. And then through that, the currency will change. The way that we manage things changes. And so, like, on a very big picture, that's my feelings around money right now, that we can make huge change on the planet by the way that we show up for ourselves and our relationship with it. And I think as far as kids go, like, it's our duty in life as human beings to learn this stuff so that they don't. And, like, what's going to happen? Like, I really do think, like, what's going to happen when we look at the future for our kids of the way that money works? Like, what is the system going to look like? And how do we want to create that? Because these kids of ours that are coming through right now, they're freaking brilliant and genius. And, like, I look at my kids who are 11 and 14, I'm like, if I knew then what you guys, if I was the person then, right? If I could be the human being that you two are, and the awareness that you have, holy cow. And I just look at what's coming through, because I know it's not just my kids. There's many kids like this. And I'm like, I get chills again.
I got chills too, because I see it in my kids too. I mean, my 6-year-old knows what yield is. Like, he knows what yield is. Like, and he knows that you put money in and then you get a yield, whether it's you put money into crypto or you put money into a high yield savings account or a Roth IRA. Like, he understands the concept of, like, growing wealth. And one of the things that one of my mentors has talked about is like the 1% of the 1%, like the super wealthy, they don't think about where their next 100K month is coming from. They think about how is what they're creating in their own wealth going to impact 5 generations down the road. And when we can start
That's legacy.
It's legacy. And when we can start thinking beyond ourselves, which is hard, especially if you're in the beginning struggles of like in that Maslow's hierarchy of needs of, where's your next money coming from because you're living paycheck to paycheck like 55% of Americans. Like, so how does one start when you're at that space?
I think it's prioritizing. Like even if you look at our kids, right? My kids now understand, well, I can spend this money that's a $5 on this toy over here, or I can keep that. And so I actually ask my kids, like when they want me to buy cheap shit for them, I'm like, would you spend your $5 on that? Nope. Okay, well then I'm not spending mine. Right. And it's the same thing throughout. Look around your house. Look at how you spend your money. Because I guarantee you, I don't know one person on this planet that I couldn't look at your budget and go, oh, you could cut $10 a week right there. Done. No problems. And you take that $10 a week and you put that into a savings account. Just for now, put it into a savings account. Don't complicate this, guys. Because we can sit here and talk about banks. Your $10 in your bank isn't going to, it's fine. Okay. Put it in there. Make your 1% and just start making it a habit to start growing that. And that you're like, I don't need that. And actually what I find with a lot of people, having worked with so many people and understanding the fact that like when I started to really dive into this work and where I'm really aligned to help people, the people who I'm around with, a lot of people, we start to learn to manifest. But then at the end of the year, you can make multiple 6, you can make 7, you can whatever, all this amounts of money. But at the end of the year, we have nothing to show for it. Not me, but other people. And so when we look at that concept, right, and we say, well, what's the actual thing here? Is most people don't feel good at some level holding on to money. Right? There's some block that's in yourself that has said, I'm not allowed to, I'm not worthy of having this. So the fact that you start the habit of, if it's $1, $5, $10, $100, whatever it is that you can find to afford to do, right? And you start that habit and you let that sit there. Just let it sit there. And you feel okay with more money coming into that and watching it grow, it will change your life. It's so simple, and yet it will change your life.
Yeah. And it's such a powerful, like that for me was a huge shift when, even though I had $40,000 worth of debt, I started shifting from just paying down the debt to, and this is just my strategy, to investing a little bit at a time and seeing that bank account grow. I invested in percentages. So I was like just 5%. And at first, and seeing that bank account grow, like suddenly I was able to pay off 40,000 and grow to be able to hire our first fiduciary years ago that I was just so ecstatic about because they had a 50K limit. And I was like, oh, I can do it. And I was just so ecstatic, but it's a mindset shift because when it's shifting from the either or mentality to an and.
Yes.
And in the, yes, you can grow wealth and you can decrease your debt. And it's a crazy mindset shift. But when I started to see the money in one account growing, suddenly I was like, oh my God, like suddenly I was focused on growing wealth rather than paying down debt. And it was a game changer. And it's from other financial people in the industry. Who have a different take on it. I saw that as being a greater mindset shift than what I had been focused on and what I'd been trained by other, wealth people in the industry to just like decrease your debt and eat rice and beans. And I was like, I felt miserable. I felt horrible. And versus the feeling that comes when you see like one account just growing and suddenly you're like, oh, I can do that.
But it also, I think at the end of the day, I think that also shows on a really beautiful way. Like if we don't have that forward, then likelihood is you'll pay down the debt and you'll end up creating it again because you don't actually still have the energy of, I'm okay to hold money. I'm okay to have money because you are coming from the energy of, I come from lack and scarcity and debt, just like we've just talked about of makes sense. Like it's the conditioning that we have. Right. And so of course I can carry all this. And then, but until you actually step into being the person who rewards yourself and holds money and and gives you a reason to actually feel good about living your life, you're going to just constantly be in that energy of debt, and probably take on more debt.
Yeah. Keri, I want to invite you back for a part two because I think we can get into some deep stuff around like independence and I mean this has just been phenomenal.
Mm.
And it's a topic that I'm so incredibly passionate about because of the sovereignty, because of being able to I too believe that when we can shift the consciousness of the planet around money, then suddenly we all become more collectively empowered as individuals, which empowers us as a collective rather than coming from a collective of scarcity. And you and I are so in alignment on just being able to empower others to grow. And I hope that you are taking some epic lessons and that you took notes with you. And so I'd like to conclude this with a little bit of rapid fire. Are you ready?
Okay.
Who is your favorite female character in a book and a movie and why?
It's so interesting because it's not true. This is not my favorite, but the one I'm hearing right now is Pocahontas, which is weird because I don't know, but we're going to go with it because that's what I'm hearing.
Cool.
And if I think about Pocahontas, I love her. It's actually, she's a very individual person, right? She came out in her own sovereign, like, I'm not supposed to be I'm going to make change. I'm going to be open to what's here and I'm going to stand in who I am and not falter just because this entire thing came in that was not in alignment to me. And yeah, I mean, that's the reason that I'm feeling her right now, I guess.
Yeah. What woman alive or in their time living would you want to trade places with just for a day to live in her body, see how she thought, see how she experienced the world?
Right now, J-Lo.
J-Lo. Oh, she's a badass.
She's a badass. I mean, like, I love her curviness and that she freaking owns her curves, that she's multi-passionate, has amazing, successful businesses in multi-different arenas in life. And that she did come from, like, she just grew herself and she owns herself and she does not let people tell her shit. I think she's a badass. I would enjoy being in her body for a day.
So I normally ask, what is your morning routine? But I'd love to know, what is your money routine? Like daily money routine, daily or weekly money routine?
So I do clearing. So I use like kinesiology and some other emotional clearing stuff that I'll do. And actually, so you can actually energetically look to where am I at in my energy field of what I'm allowing myself to receive, and then look at the emotional capacities and the things that are blocking myself to be able to move beyond that. That's one of my favorites. Listening. I love listening to any, like so many different, there's podcasts, there's courses I'm in, whatever, around money and money mindset, books you can go back to over and over again. And one of the things that's really important on a day-to-day basis, just to think about, is your wallet. So I do feng shui. It's one of my things, and you can feng shui your wallet. And so if you look at how you literally put your money into your wallet, this is a really fun tip. Like, just consider, like, what does your wallet look like? Are you keeping track of your wallet? Is it like a happy, healthy wallet? How are you putting your money in? Are you stuffing it in? Are your receipts all in there? Is everything bunched in and crumbled? Can it have space to breathe? And a really, really, really interesting tip for feng shui of your wallet is that if you look at your wallet and where all of your credit card slots are, right? Mm-hmm. If we look at, again, energy, we don't want to have things like if one's going vertically and one's going horizontally, and like we want the energy to be able to move through. So if it's got confusion of the directions of where it's supposed to go and it's supposed to bounce all over inside of your wallet, it's probably maybe bouncing all over. And so one of the things you can look at inside of your wallet is like, is everything in direction? Is everything neat? Is everything clean? Look at your handbags. Like, how are you literally physically caring for money?
I completely align and practice the same thing and do a regular handbag cleaning, especially since there's other child products in there and things like that that get thrown into the mom bag. So what do you define to be your kingdom or your queendom?
My body, my temple, and on a very big level, like this vision feels like the balcony I stand on, right? The balcony I will scream from of sovereignty, truly, like, how do we create? And I love that we're talking about this, because how do we truly create a sovereign space? And then from that, my kingdom, my queendom is let's do this. Let's lead you into this world of sovereignty in all ways of your life.
Lastly, Keri, how do you crown yourself?
My own journey with pleasure. And so I'd say dance, movement, touch, sensuality, honoring myself, And as you said, devotion, like that's where the self crown comes from, and like being in the fullness of my own self. And one of the things I will say that is a crowning piece for me that has really helped me own my crown is sexy selfies. Because when you can freaking look at yourself and you can go, wow, woman, you are fucking hot as hell. You can own it. And the thing that I will find that I say that has found such an impactful difference on a picture versus looking in a mirror, right? That mirror can lie so hard because it's our beliefs that we see, right? It can lie so hard. But when I look at that picture, if I were to have taken that same picture of Kimberly, I'd believe that it was her. I'd look at it and go, yeah, I totally took that picture. It looks exactly like you. You're freaking hot. Gorgeous. Right? When I look at that picture of myself, I'm like, I can't pretend, because I would have said the same thing about Kimberly. She took the picture. She's hot, sexy. Her body looks great. So it does on mine. And so it becomes this inner belief system that it's like, you're not lying to yourself anymore. And when you can find that freaking gorgeous, stunning, amazing beauty that you are, no one can take you off that perch.
Keri, how do we work with you? How do we find you? How do we save our assets?
You can come. I have a new, oh my God, this is really weird. I haven't said this website yet, but it's kerilynn.love. We are redirecting, and God help me that it's all over there right now, but I'm rebuilding the website, kerilynn.love. You can find me on Facebook. I am now officially Keri Lynn on Facebook, which is really exciting. Instagram, things are coming over there. So things are moving as they are right now. It actually probably says in some places Keri Norley, so that you know, but I am moving everything to Keri Lynn on Facebook, Insta, my website, and kerilynn.love / I want to say Save Your Assets, the book, Save Your Assets book. We'll give you a link anyway. It'll be in here. I should know that. It's new though. And that's where the book will be.
Phenomenal. As always, my fellow sovereigns, follow her, engage with her. And as always, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If what you heard resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and start creating a bigger impact now by sharing this with a friend. Just by doing that one simple act of kindness, you are creating a royal ripple to support more people in their sovereignty. And if you're not already following on social media, connect with me everywhere at crownyourself.now for more inspiration. I am so excited to connect with you in the next episode. And in the meantime, go out there and create a body, business, and life that rules. Because today, you crown yourself.